Well, there's certainly been some surprises when it comes to the managerial merry-go-round in European football so far this summer. Well, today we're back with our first one from the off-season in the EFL Championship, and I think it's fair to say that this one pushes itself right near the top of that table. Over the past 24 hours, this story very quickly developed as Wayne Rooney became the lead candidate for the Plymouth Argyle's manager's job. Of course, had been available for a few weeks after Ian Foster were let go. And of course, they managed to stay up on the final day with the combination of director of football and coach in charge. But it's been a pretty interesting season for Plymouth, which ultimately ended in survival in their first championship year, which was the most important thing. And they were looking for a managerial replacement. And we know who the man is now. An England legend, a Manchester United legend, and a man that's been the figure of much ridicule since his stint at Birmingham City as manager. Much derision of the decision made by Plymouth Argyle here. We're going to talk about the new man and what we can expect from him in a minute and what we predict to happen in the future with Plymouth Argyle. But very quickly, as we always do at the start of these ones, we're going to have a look back at the old man Ian Foster, where we did do the manager special at the start of January when he came in. And there's always that element of uncertainty. Clearly, he's got a good reputation as a coach as part of the England setup in the Republic of Ireland, where he'd managed in a league a few times. But the one thing you're never sure of when coming to manage at a good professional level is what is the man management and media skills going to be like? Now, I always use this example, and I'll apologise for doing so again, from my club Luton Town. I use the two examples of the two Joneses we had taking their first managerial stints. Nathan Jones, who proved himself to be an excellent man manager and helped push the club on to the next level. And then Graham Jones, who despite arguably being a better coach and going on to bigger and better coaching roles since, just didn't have the man management, media personality and skills on that side of the game to deal with what was coming his way as a number one. Now, Ian Foster seemed to fall into the latter category, and unfortunately it's something you don't really know until the manager's had a go in that number one position. And certainly in his first senior managing role for 13 years after managing in a League of Ireland prior, there was a lot of lessons learnt there. Plymouth went from a side that started the season under Steven Schumacher with a really expansive, exciting style of play and a very good home record too, to a side that not only couldn't win games at home, but couldn't even score goals either. And I know there were a couple of big departures in January, the move from Finn Azaz going off then to Middlesbrough and a separate loan spell. And obviously Morgan Whittaker was the shining light in a team who did stay till the end of the year. But I hate to say it, you would expect Plymouth were going to have to build without next season. But it just didn't work for Ian Foster. 4 wins in 17 games, a win rate of 23%, a subject we'll probably be talking about a bit more later on with another manager as well. But overall, it wasn't just the results, was it? It was the fact that the goals dried up, the entertainment dried up, and Plymouth slipped down the table, which that, to me, wasn't as much of a shock. We thought it was going to be quite close come the end of the year. But the manner of it, I did feel that they had to make the change, and they may have been going down without him. 1 win in 12 games towards the end, and 5 straight home defeats without scoring. Just not good enough. And those home goals drying up really were the key factor in the fans not being able to get on board with him after such an exciting start under Schumacher. We know the circumstances in which he left. We're not going to go back over that again. But of course, the director of football, Neil Dewsnip, led the survival charge in the end. And he has led the appointment of what is now technically a 5th Scouser in succession at the helm, whether that be permanently or interim, at Plymouth Argyle. Because we're moving on to a new man who commercially will be absolutely brilliant for Plymouth. But commercially, I've got to do my job here too. So very quickly, before we talk about the appointment of Wayne Rooney on a 3-year deal, let me tell you a quick word about our partners and what they can do to help you. For this video, we're proudly partnered with HelloFresh. HelloFresh are on a mission to make your meal times easier with pre-portioned ingredients, quick and easy recipe cards, and plenty of treats we can get on board with too. Get 60% off your first box plus free dessert for life by clicking a link at the top of the description. Sounds good, doesn't it? I've tried it before, I'm a big fan of the brand and have helped with my weight loss this year too. There's healthy options available, so why not grab your discount and give HelloFresh a go from the description below. Well, that's right, Plymouth Argyle have gone for Wayne Rooney on a 3-year contract for the championship season upcoming. The 24-25 year will be led by the England and Manchester United legend. But of course, it has been the subject of much ridicule recently because of the stint at Birmingham City last year. Now, let's firstly give the facts in terms of results, and then I'm going to give a few caveats that maybe will hopefully help Plymouth fans a little bit. We'll see. I'm still not convinced it's the best appointment, but it might be a better one than it looks on paper. Now, Wayne Rooney came into a situation at Birmingham where John Eustace had been sacked completely out of the blue in the playoff places. A man who cared about the club, had set them up with a young team that was improving, that was entertaining at home, scoring goals, albeit struggling on the road. And Wayne Rooney came in with the exclamation of, has got to play a very different style of football. And he maybe didn't help himself with the no-fear football approach, but he had to play differently. If Wayne Rooney had come in and got decent results and Birmingham had finished where I think they would have under Eustace in mid-table, then I think people would have said, well, why did you replace Eustace? So he had to change the style quite drastically, or attempt to. And to do that without a transfer window and to be sacked right at the start of it did seem a little harsh. But ultimately it was 2 wins in 15 matches. It was the drying up of a home record, just as we saw at Plymouth with Ian Foster. And it was a team that was leaking really poor goals and setting up in a way that was both bold but also quite stupid at times. Something that you could have argued Steven Schumacher did at the start of the season, but with great effect because he had a team that suited it. So Wayne Rooney was never going to succeed at Birmingham because he wasn't given the time to change and adapt the team, which is something we said would be crucial when he took over. In that manager special, we said he's got to get to the window and change the style of players because he can't complete his objective and what he's being asked of with the team that had been built to be very solid and compact under Eustace. Now, he wasn't given that opportunity. And on paper, his managerial record didn't look great. He didn't do a great job at DC United. And in Derby, in very difficult circumstances, he did okay. But he's never been a manager at a side that have been winning lots of games. Now, I would argue that certainly for the next season or two at Plymouth, that is not going to be the ultimate priority. Even the most optimistic of Plymouth fans is not going to expect Wayne Rooney's side to win every game. All they want is a competitive side that are entertaining. And we saw under Schumacher in the first half of the year how happy they were with that. Yes, sometimes you're going to get outscored, but you're having a real go. And I've had a similar experience this season as a Luton fan in the Premier League where, yes, we've ended up being relegated, which Plymouth won't want to do, but we've had a go. We've been close in games and we've enjoyed watching the football. Now, the positives that Wayne Rooney has here coming into the Plymouth job is he's got a side that is much more suited to the brief and the style of football he wants to play. He's not just been chucked a team that's been built by a solid manager and said, make this team play excellent football whilst getting the same results. He's come into a team that have just survived, started the season brilliantly and have lost their way a little. And I would argue that Wayne Rooney's preferred style of play, if it comes off, is much closer to what Steven Schumacher was doing than perhaps the change from Eustace to Rooney at Birmingham. Now, it is all ironic in this that the reason Wayne Rooney has got a championship job to go to here is because he was in charge of Birmingham and sent them so far down the table. And that alone should make him a bit more popular with Plymouth fans than he probably is from the messages we've seen early on. We do have to ask the questions about the recruitment pool. Of course, it is someone that Neil Dewsnip knew from the Everton Academy, has worked with before from a playing capacity as a young player. And of course, we know as a person, and certainly in terms of footballing intelligence and vocabulary and etc., as a media personality now as well, Wayne Rooney has developed massively from that. However, you do have to ask with Dewsnip, is he going outside of his own circles to appoint managers? Is he attracting the best candidates or just some of the ones he knows? Because we know that there was a suggestion Liam Rosenior had been offered the job earlier in the summer, someone who ironically worked with Rooney in that Derby team. But is Neil Dewsnip finding the best candidate? I guess that's a question that has to be asked, and my answer, based on what we've seen, might be maybe not. But the flip side of that is that the biggest mistake Rooney made at Birmingham, in my opinion, and at some of his other clubs, but the fact that he wasn't able to in the Derby situation, is not having that experience around him. I always mention it with young managers and young head coaches. Bring in an experienced number two. It's so helpful. And all of the talk in the background, I know it says at the moment further appointments to come, but all of the talk at the moment is about potentially Mike Phelan and then Tom Huddleston coming in as well, which I think would be absolutely phenomenal. Now, Mike Phelan would make a huge difference as both an experienced coach, an experienced assistant, and someone who can just offer that hand of advice, and also that little bit of advice on the training ground about managing people and where to go in certain situations. He'd probably take a lot of that burden off, having worked with some greats himself and some different styles of managers under different pressure, We saw it was the first thing that Solskjaer did when he came back to United permanently. So that for me is a little crumb of comfort for Plymouth fans, but there is no doubt on the flip side of that there is a lot of work to do, because it is a Plymouth side that survived by the skin of their teeth. There's no doubt in that. They're a side that lost their way in the second half of the year, lost a lot of their goal threat. And I would suspect this summer, again, probably even the most optimistic of Plymouth fans, will expect them to lose their key goal scorer from last year. And without that, they are going to have to rebuild and find a different method of attacking threat. There are still some very good young players at Plymouth, and it is much more aligned with perhaps the Derby squad that Rooney inherited than the Birmingham one. And it is a team that will suit his style, but it's going to need additions to survive in a championship. With the greatest of respects, teams like Rotherham going down, no disrespect to them. I mean, they were terrible last year. They weren't competitive. And we're losing teams like that from the division, but the teams coming up from League One look pretty good, don't they? You've got Derby and Portsmouth, who are both going to invest. Oxford were excellent in the playoffs and tactically very astute. So it is going to be more difficult than ever for Plymouth to survive unless teams lose their way off the pitch, which we saw a couple of seasons ago with the likes of Wigan and Reading. So I think that's going to be the big thing this summer. Neil Dewsnip now needs to get back to his senior role and work with Wayne Rooney to build a side that's competitive and in his mould. Now, that's something he didn't get the chance to do at Birmingham. It's something he didn't get the chance to do at Derby. Derby because of financial restrictions and administration, rather than losing his position due to poor form. So that's going to be the deciding factor here. I actually don't think this is anywhere near as much of a disaster as some people are making out, but of course you can see why. Wayne Rooney is one of the biggest names in England football in the 21st century, and he's coming into this job after a disastrous spell at another that ended up being relegated at Plymouth's expense. I completely get it. But I think all of the initial welcome to relegation or welcome to League One stuff is maybe a little premature for Plymouth. I do think they're going to be in a relegation battle next year, and barring the appointment of one or two particular managers, like if they'd managed to get Rossinia, I think that probably would be the case anyway. Plymouth are going to have to build their way into the division. I've been there again with Luton Town over a 2 or 3 year period before you can push on. It does take time for most clubs, but Plymouth have got a big fan base. They've got a huge catchment area. They're a great club, and generally, they've been really well run in recent seasons. We've spoken to people on this podcast about what a great place Home Park can be to play your football. I mean, Anthony Sarcevic is a great example that springs to mind. Absolutely adored it and spoke about how important it was compared to other clubs, that home stadium. And that's why the only thing that worries me about this is, will the Plymouth fans get on board with Rooney? Because there will be a few, regardless of what they want to think and how optimistic they want to be, that will be going, oh, this is a disaster, isn't it? This can only go wrong. And that approach is felt in a stadium. We sort of saw it when Nathan Jones left Luton a second time to go to Southampton. The fans just couldn't get themselves on board with it, even when they tried. And that's normally only going to end one way. But I trust the Plymouth fans to give them a chance. And actually, I don't think this is going to be as bad as people think. I think the goal scoring threat will be bigger. I think defensively, there's still going to be chaos for the next year. And I still think there's going to be a relegation battle. But this is the point in the podcast where I have to ask, will he survive his contract, and will Plymouth do well next season? I think Plymouth will be in the relegation battle, and based on what we see at the moment with the squads in the Championship, I would probably, as it stands, have them just to go down. I hope I'm wrong, because Plymouth are a side that I've got a little bit of a soft spot for no explainable reason. And I do think he will get the season, but it only takes a few signings this summer and a few little bits of promise in terms of styles of play. And Plymouth fans will be on board in pre-season, and Wayne Rooney could get off to a positive start. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom yet. I'm basing it more on what I see of the squad at the moment compared to others, rather than where Plymouth are going to be in pre-season and where they're going to be at the end of the transfer window. So I don't think it's as bad as people are making out, but I can understand why there's uncertainty and, in some cases from outside the club, derision at what they've done. It's not important what I think though, is it? What do you think, Plymouth fans? Are you excited by this appointment? Are you worried, or are you just not having it? Let me know which in the comments below. Do you think he'll get on well? Do you think he'll see out his 3-year deal? I mean, it's pointless asking the second one now, isn't it? Most managers don't see out their contracts. They either succeed and move on, or they get sacked, more likely. So Wayne Rooney, not likely to see out his 3-year deal. But what do you make of the appointment? Are you as doom and gloom as most of social media and the Plymouth Argyle message boards? Or Can you actually see the thinking behind this one? I'll be interested to get your thoughts. If you did enjoy our little look at the new Plymouth Argyle manager Wayne Rooney, then please do put a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe down below for plenty more of these over the summer, as well as a few special interviews we've got lined up and a lot more too. You can find our predictions for tomorrow's Championship playoff final up in the eye above, and do check out the link to our partners HelloFresh at the top of the description below. Thank you very much for watching though. I hope you're enjoying the off season. We'll see you back here with more manager specials soon, and in the pre-season predictions as the weekly Championship action and predictions starts all over again.